Hello, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all enjoyed your breakout sessions. We know that the breakout session with Doug was a bit more of a breakdown, but don't worry, we're going to solve that. Doug is absolutely fizzing to tell you all his kind of chat, so we'll make that work. And we're also going to make sure that all the sessions are going to be online, so you can watch them whenever you want. So we're going to crack on here, though, with a lovely Q&A, and it gives me great pleasure to... You can see their names. But, might as well introduce them anyway. We've got Dr. Chris Tuckett, who's the MCS Director of Programs, wave. We've got Dr. Peter Richardson, MCS, Head of Ocean Recovery. You can wave too. There we go. The Professor, Ben Garrett, MCS Ocean Ambassador, among other things. There he is. And the fabulous and much maligned, but we love him all the same. It's good old Dougie Allen, MCS Ocean Ambassador. Never mind. Well, look, Doug, I know you missed out then. So what we've got here, ladies and gentlemen, is we've got some fabulous questions that have come in. We know there's going to be more questions going on here as well. Just bear with us, okay? We'll try and get all the questions online at some point. But I'm going to start off with Doug because he didn't get anything earlier. So very simple one, Doug, if you can. Yep. We've got one here. What is the most effective method of ocean conservation, or what is the best strategy that could protect the oceans and the species within it? It's a bit of a big one.
It just comes down to people. I tell people the biggest power you've got is where you put that X on your ballot paper. So that's the first thing, take it all the way to the top. But also there's a number of small local organisations. MCS is obviously one of the bigger ones, but there are local organisations that you can get involved with and you can do your bit towards, because everything helps. Every little bit helps. You can get involved in the big schemes and the big things that are going on by putting your name onto petitions, what have you. But you can also get out there. You can adopt a piece of beach. You can adopt a pathway, what have you. Just get out there, do something, and just keep your finger on the pulse and join the MCS, and then you'll be part of this super big organisation that is doing so much.
Well, there you go. What an answer, ladies and gentlemen, straight off the bat. And I think actually this question going to the Professor, I love calling you the Professor, Ben. You could be a superhero or a supervillain, depending on, which way you were feeling today. So that runs very nicely off what Doug was just saying there. The question is, how can we support and empower the next generation of ocean guardians to protect our seas?
I'm going for a little bit of both this evening, so I'm like a really benevolent villain, I guess. Thanks, Blowfish. I would agree with everything that Doug has said so far. It's in your power. And I was saying in my breakout session that we've listened to Peter and we've listened to all the incredible science that's going on. The science is there. We know that. And it's very hard to lose sight of, well, governments aren't doing what they should be doing. There's bigger countries than us screwing things up. There's bigger issues, blah, 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 all this stuff. We cannot lose sight that we all have the ability to change the world, however small. And I read, and those in my breakout session are going to have to repeat myself. Sorry, guys. There's this wonderful quote from a Senegalese forestry expert from the late 60s who spoke at the IUCN, Baba Diop. In the end, we will conserve only what we love. We will love only what we understand, and we will understand only what we are taught. You are all here this evening because you love the natural world, you specifically love the marine environment, and in many ways you're a captive audience. You also, unfortunately, have the obligation now to spread that love, spread that understanding, and spread that passion to so many others. And the best demographic for that is kids. If we can help them understand, empower them to be stewards of the world around us, that is a legacy that lasts and lasts and lasts. So as well as you loving the natural world, share that love. It makes all the difference. There are my standard answers, of course, that Marine Conservation Society is doing so much in terms of working with schools and working with other community groups. As Peter said earlier, there's a whole new raft of digital material going out there. But fundamentally, it's spreading that education, that awareness, that understanding to those around us, and that will make.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. And I mean, we had a fabulous presentation from Peter earlier, covering a huge amount of topics that the oceans face, but certainly ones that I think we can all understand. And taking what Ben said there, looking at what can we get kids interested in, what can they grasp hold of, are, I think, much more visual aspects. So this next question goes to Chris, and it is, what impact is plastic pollution and sewage? Really quite visual stuff. We know that, kids know that. What impact is plastic pollution and sewage having on our ocean? And what is MCS doing to put pressure on businesses and governments to stop it getting worse?
Well, I think we know about the impacts, don't we? We've seen it. We've seen, those of you that go out and do your beach cleans, it's still there. Plastic's there. It is having an impact. It's not just the plastics, it's chemicals and persistent chemicals in our seas as well. And you'll always see quite a lot in the news about sewage and combined sewer erosion flows and all that kind of stuff. So it is out there. The problems that we've known about for ages are still there. And I kind of say it's sort of flatlining in terms of the impacts and how much is going in. So what we want to do as MCS is stop it, but stop it at source. Those of you out there that go out and do the beach cleans and pick up litter, you do a fantastic job. But the most important thing that you're doing is actually recording the data of what's happened, what you're finding, because we then use that to go back to the government and go internationally. It gets reported internationally, and that tells those who are making the regulation what's happening, how much litter is out there, and the fact that it isn't getting any better. So we're doing that. We're putting that pressure on. We were demanding that legislation to come into place, like deposit return schemes for plastic bottles. We've been waiting for years for this. So we really are putting the pressure on around that, and everybody's helping us, which is fantastic. But we're also working with business and we're working with investors. For instance, things like wet wipes, they up till now haven't had a label on to say don't flush. Because of the work that we've been doing with businesses, they now do. There's a debate about wet wipes and whether you need them or not. But if you're going to use them, you need to not flush them, and that labelling needs to be really clear. And then another real specific thing that we've done is work on filters in washing machines, so that all those microfibers that get washed down the drain from your washing machine and end up ultimately in the sea, they get pulled out. And it looks as though there's legislation coming along to fix that. So the stuff that everybody does in gathering the data is really important. Please keep doing it because it's vitally important. But we're also going at business and investors and encouraging them to work with us on the specific problems that we see.
Excellent stuff. So we know, Chris has made some fabulous points there. We know about plastics, we know about sewage, but the unseen risk to us all, and the one that seems to have crept up on our governments but not on our scientists, is of course CO2, carbon emissions, carbon dioxide, all that kind of jazz, greenhouse gases. Now, very recently, Seagrass has appeared as this kind of blue superpower. So for Chris, you just dived in quickly, if you will, since we're marine and all that. You dived in quickly about seagrasses during your presentation at the start. But how feasible is the establishment of seagrass, restoration of old ones? How can seagrass help the broader economy, the broader society going forward? Sorry, that was for Peter. I'm sorry, Peter. The professionalism to the end. Sorry, Chris.
So you're absolutely right. CO2 and carbon emissions is the issue of the day. It's what we have to act fast on. Ocean-based solutions, like I said, can provide about 25% of closing that emissions gap. But the key priority is obviously decarbonising our economy and reducing our reliance on fossil fuels. To get to net zero, we need to be fixing some of that carbon that's out there in the sea and in the atmosphere, fixing it and storing it away forever. And that's where blue carbon habitats such as salt marsh and mangroves and seagrass can really help. Now, that's not all those habitats do. So obviously they also provide habitat for a range of different species. They provide nursery habitat for commercial fish species. Salt marsh also very good for flood defense. So so there's like stacked benefits, and I think that's something that we really need to understand when we're talking about ocean-based solutions. We don't need to talk about it just in terms of how it's going to help us fight climate change. It's how it's going to help us fight climate change and all the other benefits that those habitats bring that we've been talking about for years. So seagrass, yeah, it's important. It's something that the Virginia Institute has shown us can be done on a large scale, but it's difficult. It takes resources, it takes time, it takes money. But that investment is worth it in the long run. As we can see, those 3,500 hectares in the Virginia coast are now sequestering thousands of tons of carbon and are providing 3,500 hectares of fantastic seagrass habitat for all the species that live there, which is no doubt will be adding to species and habitat recovery. So I think in answer to your question, it's important for lots of different reasons, and fixing CO2 is just one of them.
Excellent. Well, I mean, Peter, you've struck on something there that very, very important for all human beings moving forward. You're talking about connectivity, interconnected habitats. One thing plays off another, plays off another. So a question for Doug, a man that has made his monies, as it were, trying to connect people with the oceans. How do you do it? How can you really take someone who lives in a tower block in the center of Concreteville and get them to realize that while they can't see the sea, without it they're going to be in trouble?
Well, yeah, I mean, the same goes with any habitat, isn't it? It's got to start right down at primary school. It's got to start with teaching science in a different way. Teaching science really is natural history, taking the kids outside, telling them where the clouds come from, where the weather comes from, and then also a big emphasis on field trips. Take these kids to the seaside, take them guddling around in rock pools where you can find all these fascinating little animals. Take them out with jam jars to catch the little fish and have a look at them and put them back in again. It all starts with education at a very basic level and instilling people the fact that we are part of this big natural world and we can't stand apart from it. And for too long we've been taking it for granted. So I think it all starts with all of us, all within the Marine Conservation Society, all those who are listening to us, who have that power to go out and to interact with youngsters, primary school, all the way through education. Then we end up with different adults at the end of it. Adults who are in tune with the environment in a way that sadly too many adults have lost over the last few years.
Beautiful stuff, passionate stuff. I love it. So we know what we need to the grassroots level, the seagrass roots level, even. But quick one for you, the professor, Ben. Practical. Obviously, we've said great thing. Join the Marine Conservation Society. You can support us, and we can help support everyone else. But you are, Joe blogs, Jane blogs in the street. You want to make a difference right now. What is the physical difference that anyone can make right now, starting 8 o'clock right now? What could they do? Ben?
Well, no pressure. Thanks, Blowfish. You can, and we heard earlier from Chris. I mean, Chris and Peter and Doug have all said this, and I want to echo this. That when, again, I said this earlier, that first of all, it's so important not to lose sight that you do have that power. However depressing, I'm reading the comments going through on my other computer that some people are saying it's so easy to lose faith and da-da-da. Someone mentioned, I think it's Caitlin, mentioned hope somewhere. And it's so important not to lose hope. And that sounds like a flippant remark, but the more you keep that idea that we can make a difference, makes a huge bloody difference to each and every one of us. Now, Chris mentioned earlier about voting. It makes a huge difference who you vote for, both locally, regionally, nationally. It does. And again, so many of us lose hope in that respect, but it will make a difference. It has to eventually. That's all we can keep doing. I've seen that Gemma's talked about what's going on in Scotland right now, so regionally we are seeing differences there. Who you vote for, how you vote, if you vote, makes a huge bloody difference for generations sometimes. And also, I will take stock with Mr. Mombier, who wrote an article last year saying things like keep cups and straws make absolutely no difference. They do make a difference. Yes, you're not going to change the world, but you're changing minds. These are things that you can do, as you said, Blowfish, tonight, tomorrow. It's the little things that you can do at home, whether you recycle, whether you use a compost heap or not, how much you use, whether you use tea bags or tea leaves. It makes a massive difference. And it goes back to something that we've all now said. It's the more you educate yourself, the more you realize that actually the more washes I do at a higher temperature, it does cause more microfibers. The tea bags that I use do have microplastics in there. The more we know about these things, we can start making those choices, informed choices as consumers tomorrow. And for any of us who say, well, I'm never going to change Sainsbury's, Tesco's, whoever, I'm not picking on those intentionally. Those massive companies will change because we vote with our feet. We choose. We are the consumers. It makes a difference. So the better and more we understand about the world, the more informed choices we're able to make. You can start doing that right now.
Beautiful stuff. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. You're locked and loaded and ready to go. And one of the things, aside from, I'm a big fan of reusable cups. I agree with Ben absolutely. It does change how we act. It does change what we do. But of course, one of our biggest interactions with the oceans is fishing. It's how we fish. And yeah, absolutely, we can vote with our feet. We can go and get the right fish from the right places. And of course, the Marine Conservation Society has our Good Fish Guide. Now, Chris, we've got our Good Fish Guide, but I think there's a dog trying to get involved as well. He wants to ask a question himself. Chris, we've got our Good Fish Guide, which is great. It gives people an idea of what they can do. But what can Marine Conservation Society do to affect the industry and get them to just hop up their game a little?
Well, yeah, you mentioned Good Fish Guide. That's really important. But actually creating that consumer pressure is brilliant, because what we do primarily is put the pressure on governments, and back to Ben's point about voting and so on, but put the pressure on governments to make sure that they regulate the industry properly. So we're doing that. A bit dry, but there's something called the Fisheries Act that's just come in, and we are really putting the pressure on around that to make sure that it works, that it's implemented properly, and that the fishing industry is also monitored, because at the moment only about 1% of vessels, of fishing vessels, are actually monitored. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know what they're catching. We don't know what's happening out there. It doesn't necessarily mean that those big industrial fishing operations are more damaging than the small ones, because the small ones can stir up the seabed and cause loads of damage as well. They all need the monitoring and the regulation to happen. So we're doing a lot of work on that. We're also pushing around things like bycatch. So when marine mammals and other stuff are caught in fishing nets, shouldn't be, we are working with other NGOs around that to try and stop that happening as well. But don't underestimate the power of that consumer pressure. Use a Good Fish Guide. Do use it. Question your fishmonger, your supermarket fish counter about where they're getting the fish from and why, because that then creates a demand for sustainable fish, and it puts pressure on the fishing industry from the consumer direction, whilst we're trying to put the pressure on from the sort of regulatory direction. And a good old pincer movement is what we really need. So your help on that would be fantastic.
There we go. A good old pincer movement. There's nothing like getting a quick fish pun in. Well, look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm multitasking here. Obviously, I've got an eye on the timer, and realistically, I would love to give all our panel here hours of time to chat. But I think we might just nibble on, because Peter, the questions I have left for you, they're massive. I don't think it would be fair to anyone to try and get you to squeeze out an answer in 60 seconds. So, ladies and gentlemen, any questions you have asked, we will do our best to get them all answered, and we'll get them up onto the website as well, so you can see that. I would just like to say a big thank you. Peter, Doug, Ben, Chris, great stuff. A little round of applause for you there. You've all earned a cup of tea while these poor people have to put up with my bearded, balding face for a bit longer.